many of us, when we're looking at a scatter chart or we're looking at a line graph, regardless of what the data actually are, the variables or attributes, we often ascribe time when we are thinking about it. So those of you that have been in sessions where I've showed the Pew Research poll of sugar consumption per day versus number of decayed teeth, we know that the most common detractor are the two that include in recent years, even though time is not on that graph. Or if you've seen some of the graphs that came out during the pandemic and how we organize our time, that time is actually on the graph, but we've got this like wonky organization of the time. And oftentimes when I'm working with teachers and we're thinking about, okay, so is time actually in our data set? And is it actually in our question of what we were trying to explore with those data? Great. Okay, so then time goes in our graph, which then gets us to that next question of, well, so how do we graph it? If we're comparing between months as categories, or if we're comparing between seasons as categories, then we don't actually want a line, because you can't be halfway between January and February. You either are in January or you are in February. We can't be in between. And so then actually we want to use our graph types like the good old bar chart that our students love as the categories of time. And so when it's time, make a line does not actually always work, because sometimes we want our graph or that time component differently. It's not continuous, and therefore we don't need the line chart for it. Another thing that often comes up is, well, does it go on the x-axis or the y-axis? And again, this sort of depends on like, what are we looking at? What is our question? Where are we going for? Very often we put time on the x-axis. Very often when we were looking at a cause and effect relationship, and there is actually an independent and a dependent variable in our experiment, then yes, absolutely, time should go on the x-axis. But that's not always the case. And my little one, my not so little fifth grader, came home with a great example of when that is not the case. So proud mama moment, share out his bar chart. Yes, the lines are connected like a histogram, but it's actually a bar chart, small details. Well, but what I want to point out is they were looking at different types of materials and how long they take to biodegrade. So along his x-axis, he put all the different categories of different types of materials. So then what was the y? Y was the time, from months to years to an undetermined amount of time for those materials to break down.